in a galaxy far, far away.
So last night, Master Cameron, the Grandmaster Jedi that we all know, got this blog put up on his Patreon from one of his subscribers, New York Post, inside George Lucas's star-studded 80th birthday bash with Star Wars and Indiana Jones theme music and MC Steve Martin. Okay, so it was at the Lucas Ranch, Skywalker Ranch, which is 40 minutes outside of and north of San Francisco. I have actually been past it. My oldest brother actually went to parties there. He knew George. He hung out with Harrison Ford, stuff like that. And it is the headquarters of Skywalker Sound. It has a man-made lake called Lake Ewok, and it has a 150 square foot post-production facility and a 300-seat theater. Okay, that's where they had the party for him. And, as far as I'm concerned, 80 years is an achievement, and George deserved it. And it's a very interesting event because there were a lot of people I'm kind of like mystified were there. But then I think it is an A-list event, and if you're invited, you go. Oprah was there, her, I guess, girlfriend, Gayle King. Robert De Niro, gag, was there. Kerry Washington. Samuel L. Jackson was there. Mace Windu. And it had about 150 guests that showed up. And so it was quite the wingding, shindig. So Steve Martin emceed. If you grew up in the 70s and you grew up in the 80s like I did, Steve Martin literally was one of the funniest human beings on the planet. He's a comedian, he's an actor, he plays bluegrass music. He's a great banjo player. His sense of humor is very esoteric, more so than Dennis Miller's is. He is the guy that came up with the musical tribute to King Tut when Egypt allowed more than a lot of the treasures found in Tutankhamun's tomb to tour the United States. I actually got to see those in 1976 at the Field Museum in Chicago. So yes, the gold mask, I got to see that, it was quite fascinating. Steve Martin, been in many, many movies, my favorite being Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He was also a frequent guest Saturday Night Live. And he emceed it, so this was great right off the bat. And of course, George's best friend, Steven Spielberg. They have been friends since the 60s, since they went to college. They were two of the young whippersnappers following Francis Ford Coppola around the Warner Brothers lot, like baby ducks chasing their mom. Okay. And with Martin Scorsese and Brian De Palma and the rest. Steven Spielberg and George combined to create Indiana Jones and that franchise. They have been, Steven Spielberg directed one of the action pieces for Revenge of the Sith. Okay. He's probably one of the greatest film directors that has ever lived. He's up there with John Ford, Howard Hawks, and so many, okay, that have won Oscars after, one Oscar after another. He is one of those people that appreciates filmmaking. Of course, Harrison Ford, Han Solo, Indiana Jones was there, and he would have to be there. There would not be. I don't think George Lucas would be the same without him, and I know Harrison would not be the movie star he is without George Lucas, because George Lucas came up with Han Solo, and he came up with Indiana Jones, the two characters that Harrison Ford is most recognized as. Okay, and this is like an old boys reunion, which I love, and George deserved it. Okay, George deserved to have his best friends there. The people that helped him create his legend as, in my opinion, the greatest storyteller, if not one of the greatest storytellers in Hollywood history. Okay. And this is great. So then Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, took time off of hanging out with Demented Joe to go to the ranch and party, as well he should. One of the things about Mark is when you start really looking at what he says, he's a very kind of, I think, almost tragic figure. He played Luke Skywalker to the hilt. He played Mozart in Amadeus on Broadway and was up to get the part in the movie and should have. And the producers decided to go with Tom Hulce. And I think that's where his career kind of, in front of the camera, stagnated. He is a great voice actor. He did the Joker. He also did Darth Bane in Clone Wars. That's him. The Joker, of course, in the Batman animated series. And other less notable characters. Okay. But he was there. Warwick Davis, Willow, Wicket was there. From Star Wars to Willow. This is, of course, he also emceed Star Wars Celebration. I think in 2018, when Harrison Ford walked out, no one thought he would be there. And he was there. And that was a great day. I mean, Warwick is one of those gentle, wonderful souls that when you see him, he just makes you smile. And he was in two of George's creations, Return of the Jedi, as the Ewok that finds Leia, and Willow. And here's a notable one. Peter Jackson, the guy who directed and produced Lord of the Rings trilogy, who I think if they gave Heir to the Empire to Peter Jackson, gave him a chance to redo in the right way the sequel trilogy, because he's such a great director and he understands fantasy so much, this kind of thing, he could do it, because he'd do it from beginning to end. He'd film everything at once like they did for Lord of the Rings, and it would be huge. Okay, the reason why it was so good is because he was consistent. Now I know there are Tolkien fans that have problems. I don't care, but he was at the party. Then we have Jon Favreau there. Of course, Jon is producing and directing Mando and Grogu. He's also producing Dave Filoni's Heir to the Empire. Dave Filoni wasn't mentioned, but let's assume he was there as well. let's assume that there were people that weren't mentioned because they're not celebrities that were there. And this is a very interesting thing here, because as you know, if you read Cameron's, if you're a member of Cameron's Patreon, and if you come here, you know that lots of things have been going on at Lucasfilm, and Jon Favreau is basically kind of running the place now, even if Kathleen Kennedy is still nominally the president of the company. So Johnny Boy is there, Johnny Favs, okay, who respects what George did and everything. He was there. Notable by her absence is Kathleen Kennedy. Not mentioned. Now, one may say, well, she probably was there, but why would not the guest list that's listed by the New York Post list President of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy? All right. Notable by her absence. Not mentioned. Okay. Not mentioned. Was she invited? You know, you can leave that up if she was invited and didn't come. All right, but I honestly don't think she was invited. And it's just, it would be very interesting. Perhaps we'll get some inside scoops about this later. But the last thing that I saw was Frank is producing a documentary, I think, about the Beach Boys album Pet Sounds. She might be in England with him. The documentary is being filmed at Abbey Road Studios, where it was the Beatles recording studio. And that's the last picture I saw. So are they in England? I don't know. Because there's another one of their golden retriever with a new duck toy. So, you know, I don't, you know, if they were in California and didn't go because they didn't get an invitation, that's huge. Her not being listed as being there, and she's supposed to be the president of Lucasfilm, is huge. And this is the thing we have to remember. Because the guest list had everyone from Robert De Niro to Glenn Close. And if she was invited and didn't go, that looks stupid. So she wasn't invited. Okay, this is a snub. This is a snub everywhere as big as what Spielberg did to her. As in, if you remember, here you go.
Who is the glue to all 5 of these films that gave us all of our rhythm and all of our melody? The great maestro, John Williams.
So, not being invited, not being listed as one of the major guests is kind of a big snub. It's a passive-aggressive snub. Like what Steven Spielberg did, and not like what Steven Spielberg did. Because Spielberg, as you can see, was passive-aggressively canceling Kennedy. Obviously, with John being at the party, a place that he deserves to be, I think. He's one of the greatest filmmakers we have around right now. He's obviously the heir apparent. I would say having Peter Jackson there says something about perhaps the direction of some of George's things. You know, Dave Filoni not being named. He's not a celebrity. I think a lot of us on a day-to-day basis could walk around and hang out with him and not realize who he was. All right. So was he there? Because of how close he is with George, I'm going to assume he was. All right. I'm going to assume he was there. It would just make sense. And probably sitting at the table with Jon Favreau and his wife and John's wife hanging out. That just makes sense to me. So people asking that question, well, where's Filoni? He's not a celebrity. All right. Who else was enlisted? Larry Kasdan. He's not a celebrity, but still, was he there? I don't know. After the fuck up from The Force Awakens and Solo, I won't let Kasdan's anywhere near me. Okay. But again, most notable by her not being mentioned and by her absence is Kathleen Kennedy. Okay. Again, the reporter and the observer would have mentioned president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and her husband, Frank Marshall. Now, here's the odd thing. I want to add this on there. Hollywood is full of people who hate each other's guts. Okay. Steven Spielberg is still partners in Amblin with Frank Marshall. I don't know if Kennedy's part of that anymore because of her work with Lucasfilm. Kennedy is listed as a producer of Twisters. Okay. And Steven Spielberg's one of the producers. Okay. Frank Marshall is the main one. So what's going on here? All right. This is the weirdness. Passive aggressively and aggressively dissing this woman while having these weird business arrangements. But yeah, this issue of her not being named as one of the guests at George's 80th birthday party as a BFD. Okay. Because look at the guest list. Having Glenn Close there alone would have dragged my ass to that, whether I wanted to go or not. Robert De Niro, I could give two fucks about it. Look, I know people who worked with him. Okay. Some people said he was really nice. Others, not so much. Okay. So I would have given a care. Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill would have dragged me there. All right. All right. That's just the caliber and where I hold these people. Oprah probably wouldn't have said a word to her. There are people you don't talk to at things like this. I would have talked to Samuel L. Jackson. Okay. But the fact is, Kathleen Kennedy and her husband were not invited. And if they were invited, they would have gotten on an airplane if they're in London and flown back to be there. All right? So you guys decide. What does this mean for Kathleen Kennedy's stature in Hollywood? This is Steph, signing out. I'll see you around the galaxy.